I have a couple of them that'll go through 150 files in 2 weeks. How?
But he's retired. You know, he probably was doing like what we were doing, just working our rear ends off, and then
that's extremely efficient. And when you can get a part of that, learn it.
Matt's next video is on reverse psychology. Please don't watch it.
There is only one company that provides E&O and general liability insurance solely to the claims industry, and that's Kaplik. And they even have drone and cyber coverages. Download the free guide all about the different kinds of insurance that you as an adjuster should carry at cplic.net/adjustertv.
Yeah.
So talk about the benefits of closing on site and writing it up on site versus scope and then write later.
When you scope and write later, you always forget stuff. I can get to that in 10 minutes. You tend to put it off.
Yeah.
If you will write up what you can do in the field at that location. And I generally put a dollar limit on it. If it was under 20K, that was so quick and easy. You know, you could just, you know, you already had, you know, your shortcuts typed in. You could, you know, populate your estimate very quickly. And there's ways to do that. And then I think the longest thing was we used to have, you know, this is before Hover and Eagle View and all that. We hand drew our diagrams.
Yeah.
And so, you know, the field has it so much easier now when we can import typography into our estimate and it spits everything out. So, but you had to draw everything, and then photographs were the longest component.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it used to be, when I first started, if you had 10 photos in a file, that was probably it. It was Polaroid, and you stacked them, and, you know, 20 Polaroids in a file was a big file.
Yeah,
and
it gets heavy.
Yeah, and so, you know, nowadays on a given commercial loss, I might have 3,500 files, 3,500 photographs.
Golly.
And so, and then going through that, and then you figure the mounting time and all that it takes to do it. But that was the biggest component, was, you know, doing photographs, and then you would print them. And so in a digital file, you have you're just attaching it, so it's a lot different process. But we printed them, and I would print the entire file. So the only thing I would come back in the evening, I would have to do some manual invoicing and prepare a file. This is back in the day where we actually turned the physical file in, and even electronically when we did it, you still have to do a little bit of paperwork, very little. So I would get 7 to 10 a day. A small day with 7 files. I mean, I could blast through that.
Sure.
I have an appointment every hour and a half and blast through them. Sometimes I'd work in a couple of extras, and sometimes I wouldn't. And then by the end of the day, which I shut off at dark or work from dark to dark, while I could see in the car or see to get out. And then I'd get back in the hotel room. I'm just matching up files. Generally, my paperwork at home or in the hotel room was about an hour maybe.
Yeah.
And then I'm
go to bed.
Yeah,
have dinner,
go eat,
watch a movie.
Yeah, do whatever, and go to bed. Get up, and you know, I'm up the next morning and out the door before 6.
Yeah.
So, you know, and on my first, you frowned on looking at claims early on Saturday mornings, but, you know, 7 o'clock on a Saturday morning,
hey, some guys are like, come on.
Yeah, I'm having my coffee, but come on in. You know,
it's usually the retired guy, and you get there at the house, you know, a few minutes early or whatever, and he's the garage door is open. And he's sitting in the middle of the garage on a folding chair, like tapping his leg.
Oh, yeah.
And his yard is absolutely pristine. It's all a uniform green. Every single blade of grass is exactly 3 1/4 inches with a 37-degree bevel on each blade. And you could eat fried eggs off of the floor of his garage, tools all the way around.
It's very neat.
And he's ready to go.
Yeah. I'm like, man, I wish I could even do that in my closet.
Yeah.
You know,
but he's retired, you know, and he probably was doing like what we were doing, just working our rear ends off, and then he's not working his rear end off anymore. And so now he's
then if you step in his grass, you're getting ready to step on the grass, and you look at him like, hey, is this okay? Before I put my foot down.
Exactly. But yeah, no, I found that I was indoctrinated into closing on site.
Yep.
On my very first storm, when it was State Farm, and they were like, hey, you know, you can do it, you know, this way, but we really, really want you to tabletop, or I think all state call it tabletop.
Yep.
But they were like, close on site. We want you to hand checks. Obviously, you got to get authority, and, you know, as a brand new person, you got to like work up to that. But, you know, it doesn't take very long for them to just start to trust you if it's clicking, right? And the benefits I found, I was almost always, and I'm not bragging, it's just a statement of fact. I was almost always, if not the most productive adjuster, one of the top 2 or 3 most productive adjusters. And I was one of the only guys on any cat I was on. There might have been 1 or 2 other, maybe on bigger, like a 25 adjuster cat, that would close on site.
Right.
And I closed the whole file on site. Even when I first started, it was that whole, it had the file jacket, you hand wrote the diary, you hand wrote this, you hand wrote that. I got to use xactimate and print the estimate out, so I wasn't doing like with stone tablets and stuff like you. And then we had to staple photos, and you had to handwrite the label on the photo on the photo sheet. And I, just like you said, I could do 7 to 10 of those a day with all of that writing, right? And I would tell people this, and they didn't believe me. I don't know if people are doing full files now or even know, but they up until a lot of this like photo and scope stuff started happening, people still didn't believe me. They're like, oh no. I get out there and I scope 12, and then I go back to my hotel room and take a nap for an hour, and then I write up 7,
and you're behind.
And you're instantly behind.
Yeah,
right? And then you're working all night.
Yeah. Well, you may not ever get those other 6 done.
Yeah.
And the thing is that once you do the next day and you have the same thing, now
snowballs.
Now you're 12 behind.
It's like compounding interest, but in reverse.
Right? And then you have people yelling at you.
Yeah.
And so, you may start off, if you're working them every day and you start writing them in the field, you may start off a little slow.
Sure, absolutely.
But you're actually going to be the first one to get files turned in.
Yes.
And so people are seeing your work product.
Yeah. And you're getting calibrated by file review. You turn in 1 or 2 or 3.
Exactly. And then you're not making mistakes. Yeah. And then you actually
don't have the header on there. You forgot this, forgot that.
Yeah. But then you're not making the same mistakes over and over again. You're actually moving more product through. Yeah. And then, when I was a field guy, we always strive to be the cleanup guy.
Oh yeah.
Because the cleanup guy makes very good money. Because the cleanup guy is either working on the same fee schedule and getting everybody's, even though they reopened, it's still the same fee schedule. And so you're either paying time and expense or you're paid a day rate. And so, man, I always strive to be I don't want to be the guy that burns out because you're not getting the whole back and all that, because, they keep 10% and then whatever, if they were doing 10%. But the cleanup guy always got their whole back money back because they got to clean everything up.
Right.
And they got a day rate. And, I went from working 12 or 15 files a day or less to doing 2 or 3 files a day, making the same amount of money. It was a great deal. Yeah. So that's what we always fought over cleanup.
Oh yeah. Now, if you had an opportunity, if you're asked, especially as a new adjuster, if you're asked to do cleanup and it's like your first or second storm,
it's a huge compliment.
That's a giant compliment.
Yep.
Say yes, no matter what.
Yeah.
100%.
Well, they only want to pay me, $300 a day. Oh my gosh, but you're making a killing.
It is it's one of the biggest learning experiences you could possibly have. Because you just see great files and be like, oh man, I really love his. Yeah. I'm going to start copying, steal that guy's homework on how he's doing his stuff, and you're going to see terrible ones. What not to do?
Yeah, how did this make it through? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, yeah, because you get an improvement of work product, but the money aspect of it is, yes, you may not make $1,000 a day that you were making 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
The thing is, how much were you going to make when you went home?
Zero.
You're
going to start spending money.
Yeah. And so some companies will put you on a per diem. There's a lot of things that'll happen, and it's worth your while to stay.
Yeah. I did, usually when I did cleanup, I still got fee schedule because they would still slide new claims in there. But then you would just,
it's amazing where they come from, isn't it?
Yeah.
They just come in.
But it's like you said, they were a lot easier. I found doing supplements and re-inspections to be a lot easier than the full claim, because you just show up and most of the work is done already. You may have to like rewrite, you're gonna have to rescope it, but it's,
if you have the ESX file, it goes really quick. But
yeah, exactly. But I closed it on site. I did that primarily because I like to be able to go to bed. I like to get full 8 hours of sleep.
Did you ever look at your reopen rate?
I don't know.
So most of the people that close on site, the reopen rate is really small.
Well, yeah. So my next bullet point on this is, get to sleep at night. I'm more accurate.
Yep.
Especially because I'm not guessing a measurement. And if I forgot the picture of the back slope,
And go back.
my ladder's it's on the house until I'm ready to leave.
Right.
And so I can get, oops, I forgot to look at the left side of the house. I go over there and there's like 27 feet of awnings and holes in them, right? Oh, I mean, that you're leaving like a pile of money on the table if you miss that, because that's, And
I didn't see, I forgot the outbuilding.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
exactly.
it happens every time. Yeah.
And the customer appreciates it.
Sure.
And so your customer service numbers are a lot higher. Your technical accuracy is a lot higher. I think you can turn over claims faster doing that personally.
Sure. Carry your coverage book and make sure you're paying for the right stuff. And that's
yeah.
I
mean, you've got to kind of build up to it a little bit,
right.
Get some experience, and it may be that I would even say for new people, before you leave the house, at the minimum, just import and label your photos.
Yeah.
And just do something just do the checkbox, mark that you inspected it, right? Yep. So that pings exact analysis and lets them know. So, and write your diary entry.
Yep.
If you don't have time to write the estimate, you'll find that by the time you do those things, you're like, oh, well, writing the estimate, I mean, throw some macros in and away we go.
So it's a good segue for teams. So
sure, yeah.
In my experience, if I have teams of adjusters, husband and wife teams are great.
Yeah.
We actually have guys that go out, one of them will scope, one of them will write it up, but they work in the car. And the thing is, they may scope everything there, bring it, and one person is sitting in the car. When I've had them where they use walkie-talkies.
Yeah, I've done that.
And as they're taking pictures, spouses in the car, what's this? And they're using a walkie-talkie or a headset, and they're this is so-and-so, so-and-so facing so-and-so, doing the roof description. And by the time the scope is completed, the person in the car has written the estimate right there. And I mean, it literally is.
They hand it out the window.
Or they upload it immediately.
Yeah.
And so those people are working 12 to 15 claims filed a day.
Oh yeah. Big time.
And they blast through, I have a couple of them that'll go through 150 files in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how? Well, they're there to be efficient. They will work for 3 or 4 weeks and make what guys make in.
They're there to make money and not waste time. And
they're not there to waste time, and
you're not home.
Yeah, and their goal is to work so many storms. They save their money and they go back and live at home and live a comfortable life.
Yeah. The teams thing is, I get this question from people, and there's a number of different ways to slice it. Mm-hmm. One of the most effective teams I ever saw was a husband and wife team that they drove separately. I mean, they followed each other and drove to the storm site. When they were hired, by the firm, they knew that they were together, so they're not going to send one over to that town, one over to 60 miles away. And so she would go out and do 4 or 5 a day, and he would go out and do 9 or 10. And then they had an assistant that did like all their phone work and kept on top of their voicemail on their desk and all that stuff, and built their schedules and everything else. And they,
we might be talking about the same couple, and I won't mention names, but they train new adjusters.
Yeah.
And they have a service that makes the phone calls and routes for them.
Yeah.
And then they go out and scope. They'll do their individual scopes, or they'll scope together. And then they have 2 or 3 that they train to write those estimates. And then they graduate them to come out into the field and help them, but they're always writing that scope. Right. And so they can literally turn 20, 25 files a day, where the rest of everybody else is, struggling to get their 7 in. But they have a system down, and they've worked through that. Those teams are very efficient.
Yeah.
And when you can get a part of that, learn it. And because they set you up to do things in a specific way, in a pattern that's extremely efficient. They were some of these 2 particular people were staff people at one point, and they always tried to teach their teams to do the same thing. And hey, it doesn't always work in a big team environment, but it works for them very, very well. And they're able to take on and mentor new adjusters that way.
Learn how to earn more by arguing less in this video right here.